Hey everyone, Ben with Curate. Wanted to say hello. Happy Friday to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Talking about building a service brand today. I'm Ben. I'm with Curate, Director of Partnerships here. We also have Mike on here. I'll have Mike do an introduction from Atomicdust. We're really excited. Atomicdust is actually a local company here out of St. Louis, Missouri. So we're super excited to have them on here and talking about kind of their experience with working with branding and that client experience that customers expect kind of throughout the whole process, moving beyond just logos and websites, but really that thing that the client walks away with and says, that's what the company does, and that's how they made me feel. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Mike. Mike, if you want to tell everybody kind of who
Sure.
you are, what you do, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm in my basement, which is weird, but I'm Mike Spakowski. I am partner and creative director at a shop in St. Louis called Atomicdust. We've been operating for 19 years, and we really do branding and digital marketing. We help a lot of professional service companies, a lot of service companies, a lot of B2B and B2C with brand identity, visual design, digital marketing, lead generation, sales, stuff like that. If it's okay, I'm just going to jump right into it.
Yeah, I think that's great. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and chat us in there. We like to see where everyone's coming from as well. So chat in where you're out of. We're out of St. Louis, Missouri. Both Mike and I are. We're just far neighbors, but put in your chat where you're coming from. And then also, if you have any questions, use the Zoom function to ask a question. We're going to get to questions at the end. We've done panels in the past. Mike's going to go through kind of a presentation that he's put together. Super informative. So feel free to ask questions throughout. If he answers a question that's in there, you can do that as well. So St. Louis is being represented here on the call. So tell us where you're from. And then also Q&A as we go throughout. And this will probably be a 30-minute presentation. Then at the end, we'll get to some Q&A and go from there. So with that, Mike, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you. I'll take away my face because it's not important.
Okay. This slide is intentionally blank. I don't know why. So I am a designer and I work in branding. And so this is a quote from my next door neighbor who says, "OMG, you must have so much fun all day." And my neighbors really think I'm adorable and that when I tell people I build brands for a living, they assume that I make logos and graphics and visual kind of fun things. And they're half right, but there's a lot of strategy that goes into building a brand and a lot of thinking and overthinking. So I just thought I'd kind of share some of those steps today. Some people really invest a lot in their brand, and some people don't really put that much thought into it. And even if you don't have a logo or a fancy website or a sales cycle or a process or any of this stuff, you still have a brand. It's just sort of an accidental brand where you're letting your customers kind of shape their impression of you versus an intentional brand where it's more you're trying to guide how they feel about you, or how they think about you. So I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. But when you talk about brand, it's really, you're talking about the word reputation. And when you talk about rebranding or branding something, you could flip out the word reputation and how you're trying to shape it in the eyes of your customer. So you could swap out the word brand with reputation in almost any context and still really mean the same thing. So when we talk about branding, today we're going to talk about really building a reputation. It's one of my favorite authors on branding, a guy named Marty Neumeier, wrote a book called Zag, if anybody's read it. But he says a brand is a person's gut feeling about your product or service. So it's not really a logo or copy or experience or anything. It's someone's gut feeling. And really what he means by that is that a brand isn't what you say it is, it's what your customers say it is. And so branding is this art of trying to shape, this effort of trying to shape what people think about your business or you or your service. Okay, so here are two companies that do the exact same thing, but they go about their brand in a different way. One you could call an accidental brand where they kind of leave it up to people to figure it out. And one is a very intentional, structured brand. and I'll let you guys guess which one is more intentional. But they both do the same thing, and they just go about it completely different ways. And they really go about different audiences and different buyer types that they're trying to attract. Okay, but why do all this branding stuff? Strong brands, I believe, give businesses a competitive advantage. So businesses that put effort into branding better align themselves with their customers. So if you're Whole Foods, you know your customers are higher income and may want more organic options, and it's more of a lifestyle than just like a local market. So you can really lean into that. Okay, genius. So what makes a strong brand? So how to build a strong brand? A strong brand, in my opinion, is one that puts its customers first. So branding isn't only about you, but it's how your customers see you. So whenever you want to create a brand or rebrand or position your brand, you should start with language and concepts and not logos. So to build a strong brand, start by expressing the alignment with that audience. You can start with a logo, but it's a lot harder and more expensive to try to get those impressions in front of everyone constantly. Here's the meanest slide I'll show all day. It's kind of rude, but I don't mean it in a rude way, but no one cares about your brand. They just care about themselves. And no one cares about my brand either. You probably just care about your own businesses, and that makes complete sense. But people buy brands that make them a better version of themselves. So with every purchase that somebody makes, they're choosing who they want to be or who they're trying to become. So this is the same reason people buy luxury brands, or they align themselves with brands that work great with charities or some kind of foundation. They do it to make the better version of themselves. That's why people love to shop at Target, but are embarrassed to say they shop at Walmart, although I shop at Walmart myself. But anyway, this is my hate slide. So here's some fire. But no one cares about your brand. They just care about themselves. But this is a fundamental idea in branding. Because you are not the hero in your brand story, you are the guide. So your brand isn't about how great you are, or how long you've been in business, or if you own your own building, or if you've won an award. Your brand's purpose is to guide customers to where they want to go or who they want to be. So if you're like a luxury brand like BMW, people see that as an idea or a symbol of success. So if you're you'll know you've made it when you own a BMW, for example, or maybe you hate BMWs, but a lot of people do. Okay, so you're not the hero, you are the guide. You're not the hero, you're the guide. So most brands talk about how great they are rather than how great their customers are. So if you're used of any Hollywood major movie like Star Wars, you're not Luke Skywalker, you're Obi-Wan Kenobi. Your job isn't to take all the credit. Your job is to guide your customer into whatever goal they're trying to achieve. So you want to tell them how they could get there. Okay, so helping guide your audience starts with understanding them. So what are your customers, or who are your customers, and what are they trying to do? What motivates them? What are they afraid of? How old are they? Where do they live? The more you know about the customer, the easier it is to build a strong brand, because the easier it is to anticipate what they're trying to do and help them. Remember, you are the guide, and you have a plan. So you need to prove that you've done whatever you've done successfully before, and then a strong brand knows its customers and what they're trying to accomplish and can articulate a plan that helps them to get there. And so that articulation is brand positioning. Am I moving too fast? Is this okay?
This is great. You're doing a good job. You're going through some stuff, giving good insight.
All right. So when you talk about brand positioning, typically most brands talk about themselves, and this is a pretty common thing, and it's very natural. So you'll hear people say, we're an award-winning 20-year-old CPA firm with great people. And especially in services, it's a very, our people make the difference is something a lot of companies lean on. But a better positioned company would show the benefit of how you help them achieve something. So we show mid-sized businesses how to manage cash flow, save on taxes, and ultimately grow. So these are two different brand positions or articulations of the brand. And one is about a company, and one is about its customers and the benefits to the customers. So for another example, we're the best hotel in the world. Well, what makes the best? I mean, that's really a subjective thing. So you could align it more to an audience. So we're the best hotel in the world for business travelers, and ultimately it narrows it down and makes things easier to make, and then easier to attract customers that might be business travelers. Okay. Positioning is where branding starts. So branding begins with understanding who your customers are and what they want to accomplish, and then aligning to it. So some of you guys, a lot of businesses will have to reverse engineer their positioning. So a lot of businesses are, they're up and running, they have a logo and a process and a website and great customer experience and all this stuff. But if they ever want to refine that or pivot, they have to kind of go back and change their strategy. Sometimes people call it rebranding, which isn't just a new logo, but it's also can lead into declaring a new fit with a certain type of audience or helping solve a certain type of problem. Okay, taking a drink. An audience and two benefits. So when building your brand's language, choosing your customer market and knowing the benefit your company delivers can become your building blocks. And so when we do branding, this simple formula really becomes critical to us, just so we know how we can make a message that resonates with customers more, or with a brand's customers more. Here are two formulas. The one on the left is called an onlyness statement, and the one that Marty Neumeier, that author, uses. And then the one on the right is what we use at Atomicdust, and I'll just kind of walk you through the thinking. So we are the only blank that blanks, right? So we're the only web development firm that services healthcare companies in the Midwest, or whatever fictitious example. And then for the other side, it's for blank, we provide blank and blank. So we say for audience, we provide benefit and benefit. So we use frameworks like this to help articulate, figure out who a brand is to their audience and how we can articulate it. So we are the only business that provides something unique in our category, which is a service business. It's very hard. It's a lot harder to be unique in your category. You kind of really want to strive more for more relevant. And for audience, we provide benefit and benefit, which is kind of a universal approach just to align with customers' pain points. Okay, taglines. So we talk about sort of audience and fit, brand language, and then taglines. And taglines are a reminder of your brand's position, because no one's ever really going to remember the whole vision statement or mission statement of your company. So taglines and mantras and hashtags are a great quick reminder of your brand's positioning and what it means to customers. And you guys, I'm about to make a terrible joke, but if we're the best hotel in the world for business travelers, you can have the tagline of "You're in business," which is terrible. But it's the idea that you would have some kind of short summary of what a brand is in relationship to its customers. For example, the most famous is probably Nike's "Just Do It," which is a pretty nebulous term, but it means it celebrates athletes in trying things every day and kind of pushing yourself. Okay, so audience, positioning, brand language, and then visual identity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about visuals. It's hard to talk about visuals because I don't believe there's this one formula for great visual design, because as soon as there's something that established is a acceptable pattern. What's new and interesting is something that defines that pattern or defies that pattern. So visual identity is a combination of form and content that visually identifies and differentiates your business. So you want it to identify and differentiate. You want it to be different. So when you think about logos or branding or any of this stuff, like here is a giant sea of hotel logos, right? So which one? You know, which one is right? You know, and that is a really tough call because there's not one that really communicates a connection with the audience or one that encompasses an entire brand experience. They're just a bunch of shapes. So when crafting a brand identity, things that aren't really concrete come into play. There's style, like your own personal preference of things and the preference of your leadership, because that's important. There's trend, you know, there's design is like fashion. There's just things that are more current than not. And then there's defiance. You want to do something that the market doesn't expect, but you don't want to be so far out that no one knows you're in the same category. So there's no one perfect formula for strong visual identity. Personal preference, taste, and your competitors' identities all are factors. Visual identity should express the brand's values and position as much as possible without making a logo look like a suitcase if you're a hotel or something. But a logo alone really can't do that, which is sort of a letdown for a lot of people that you know, think a logo is going to solve everything. And also in visual identity, there should be an element of delight or an element of surprise, because you just don't want it to be expected. I think really great brands are a little weird, you know, in a friendly way that surprises you. There's this guy, this is a gentleman named Michael Beirut. He's done like the MasterCard logo and many famous logos. But he says that logos are empty vessels until they are filled with experience. And I think that's a great way to think about it. Because in my business, we'll make, you know, 30 logos for people. And when we show them, they stress so hard on making the right choice. But really without context, it's really hard to decide. So logos are empty vessels until they're filled with experience. And brands are built on experience. So visuals help create the message and tone for great brand experiences. I'm going to walk you through this brand you probably have heard of, named Curate. So we were lucky enough to work with these guys a little bit ago. They had an existing logo. We refined it a bit and we came up with some colors. But so that wasn't the end of the brand. That was just the beginning. So we tried to express a fit, and we tried to create a visual style that is ownable. So in design, you really want a logo, but you also want these graphic devices you could use on different pieces that make things uniquely yours. So even without a logo on this image, it still looks like the brand. It's still on brand because it uses those same elements. So once we have these things, we started to apply it to different touch points. So of course, things like business cards and coffee mugs, and you can see how things sort of evolve. We came up with the idea of ads, and there's an easier way to arrange your floral business, which is really, again, speaking to the audience, not just about how great the company is, but about the benefit to the audience and understanding. So that wrapped in this brand identity that is a little surprising, maybe a little fresh, a little different than competitors. And then how does that work across the sales cycle? So then we make fictitious things like bags and different brand elements to show how things live in action, right? So rather than say, here's your logo, it's like, here's how this thing lives in the world. Here's how it addresses your audience. Here's how we can roll it out across different uses. Here it is on a trade show. And then of course on probably the biggest opportunity professional or service brands have, which is their website. I know you guys can't heckle this joke, but I'm a big believer that this internet thing is catching on. And so really, the web is where brands go to live nowadays. So again, we can create these experiences that look on brand with a visual identity that speak to the benefits of the audience. And even without a logo, it still represents the brand. Okay, so a logo is just one element. Color, pattern, type, image style, all build this thing called a visual identity, and the identity should reflect that brand's positioning. Okay, but how do you know if it's any good? And this is the part where it's really hard for me to say, like, this brand is good and this brand isn't, because a brand, again, is experience, but some of the ugliest brands in the world have some of the best experiences. So it's not really always about aesthetic, but if you're trying to figure out what aesthetic is, it's really kind of about style and your own personal taste. I think you just know, right? So here are two images, and these images are contextually identical, right? There is the same model. They're both wearing glasses. They're both wearing a bright colored jacket, a background color, but I think one is way better than the other. And I can't tell you why, because formulaically they should be fine. So I think you just know when a brand aligns with your taste. Also, that's just my taste. You may have your own taste and disagree. And that's great. Whatever is a good reflection of you, it's just visual aesthetic is really left up to the person. So you want to design something that, of course, you're happy with, but also ultimately your audience is happy with and addresses their what they may think is pleasing. So how do you know if it's any good? You just do. You guys, we talked about audience and some positioning and brand language and visual identity. And all these things are really fundamental of how to build a brand. So I wanted to touch on, once you have that foundation, which I'm sure a lot of businesses out there already feel they have a great foundation, how do you grow a brand? And that is a huge conversation because there's so many different tactics in the world. But I'm going to tell you from my experience what I think the best are. So there's branding versus marketing. Branding is your message and marketing is your frequency. So branding is the foundation and marketing is the thing that gets it out to people. So the things we talked about, audience and positioning and brand language and visual identity, that's all the core, that's the start. And then to grow, tools and tactics, so websites and CRM and content and landing pages, and email and social, and things like video or Instagram and all these different channels. Those are the tools of growth, but they should all be based on the same sort of strategic foundation. A service brand's job is to build reputation. Like that's your core goal. That's my core goal as a service business. So you have to become your own hype machine because no one will hype you up besides yourself. You need to be known in your category, and you should do something every day to build reputation. And that's most easily done on the internet. You should refine your marketing plan. So building reputation, increasing relevance, and increasing visibility is a priority because that's kind of the heart of it. I met this guy. I was at this seminar years ago. This really like successful agency owner was there, and everybody knows this guy. And like everyone knew his firm, and his work wasn't like that much like better than anyone's. It was just everyone knew him, and so he spoke and he said the line. I ask myself every day, what have I done today to build our reputation? So every day he would just get to work and obsess about what he could do to build his reputation for the firm in one way or another. And this idea haunts me, but I also love to share it because I think it's good advice. The fastest way to build reputation are speaking and writing, which is really easy to do on the internet. And sometimes you can find yourself giving long-winded presentations about branding and marketing as a way to build your own reputation, or maybe destroy it. You never know. Okay, so here's the greatest marketing advice that I'll give you that no one wants to hear. Are you ready? You need to write a lot. Your website, which is probably your biggest opportunity I'm generalizing, but in service businesses, your biggest opportunity for lead generation in sales, you should have about 3,500 new words on it per month. So 3,500 new either blog posts or updates or pages around content that should be focused on helping your audience become the hero they want to be. So maybe that's 10 tips to how to better your, whatever, or ideas around something that makes their life better. But it shouldn't be about you necessarily. It should really be about them. So this will help SEO. And let me unpack that for 1 second. But when people go to Google, they tend to ask it questions, right? They say, what's the best blank? And how do I blank? And your job is to anticipate those questions your audience will ask and write and create content around those questions. All Google does is take the question and match it to the web page that answers the question best. So you want to have your site have that thinking in mind where you create things that answer your audience's questions. So writing will help SEO, establish you as an expert, and give people a reason to come back to your website. How many websites do you go to? You go to once, you read it, it's sort of general, and you close it, and then you never go back. Like, why would anyone ever go back to your website is a great thing to kind of obsess about. So give people a reason to come back. Okay, taking a drink. Your content will become conversion-focused landing pages on topics your audience is searching for. So again, if you create content that's helpful for your audience, Google will skip your homepage and show that subpage, that content page first. And that's a real opportunity to create more conversion-focused, sales-focused landing pages, maybe at the end of the content. I always think, or I say content should be about 80% helpful and then 20% sales. So sometimes at the end of content, you could put an offer or something, or some kind of call to action. Also, the goal of the website should be to get people to subscribe to your email newsletter. And you'll need one of those too if you don't have it. But really, you want to take that traffic, you want to capture them so you can give them a reason to remember you. So every month, service businesses, at least a month, should send out an email to their list. Not because that list is always ready to buy, but you want to use email as a way to remind people that you're still alive. Like, we're still here doing this thing. We're still here performing this service. And if you have a need, great, but just keep us in mind. So we have people on our email list that we've had for, 10 years. And I know that not everyone rebrands all the time, but we just want to stay top of mind at least once a month to in case people ever have the need. Anyway, I told you didn't want to hear the advice, but really writing is to me foundational for content and branding nowadays. And really, writing is a pain to get started. And I have advice on that, but writing makes everything easier, even writing. Suddenly you'll know what to say on your social media channels, and you'll know what to share and how to promote yourself in a way that isn't just sort of generalist things like Happy National Donut Day. Whenever I see brands promote donut days or any kind of national holiday, I just wonder, like, is that the only thing they could really come up with? And I love donuts, and I love brands, and I love promotion, but I just think, like, it's such a low-hanging, non-helpful to the audience piece of content that I just wonder if they run out of things to say, like me in this presentation. So you can take your content and then you share it on whatever channel you have. So LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. And you can say, hey, I wrote a blog post about how business travelers can double their hotel points. And we've all seen stuff like this. You use your hashtag or your mantra or tagline or whatever. So you're in business, back to my in joke. And then you link. And you try to do this as often as you can, but you don't make it about just how great you are. You make it about how helpful you can be to your audience. Also, you should post on social media every day, which I understand is a lot. And some people love it and can post 10 times a day, and some people drag themselves to it and hate it and don't really want to get involved. But if you can't post, at least like, comment, and participate in other people's conversations in the channel. So if you're on LinkedIn or if you're on Facebook or something, you should not just post your own stuff and bail. You should hang out for a while and comment and compliment and try to be as much of a person as you can on these channels. Okay, we talked about website, we talked about content, landing pages, emails, social media. I didn't get granular. I didn't talk about where to put the button or the header or the best design patterns for conversion. We just don't have that much time. But and then also, one of the big things that I see nowadays is being extremely important is a marketing CRM, which is a list of customers that you could track activity, and you could gauge interest and create content. You can also use it as a hub for ads and a hub for emails and things like that. I use HubSpot for my own shop, and I preach it all the time because I think it's a great tool. And especially with analytics and SEO, it's just a great kind of way to get everything on the same page. Okay, last thing, and I'll be quiet. The sales cycle. So you already have a brand, you already have marketing, you already have all this stuff. How does this work? And really, you want to think about your sales cycle, your customer experience of when they hear about you, to when they become a client, to when they're no longer a client or a customer. And you want to ask yourself, what are people thinking, feeling, and doing? Okay. This is a customer journey map, and it's very simplified for this presentation. But I think all businesses can be broken down into 4 categories. And it's really, if you can remember the heavy metal band AC/DC, you can remember this. But it's so you want to attract, convert, deliver, and collect. So attract is how you get customers. Convert is how you take a lead and generate to close them and make them a sale. How do you deliver? How do you actually provide that service? And then how do you collect payment? And then testimonials and referrals. So along each step, you want to say, when people are in the attract phase, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? And what are they clicking on? So, and along with each phase. So convert, thinking, feeling, doing. Deliver, thinking, feeling, doing. Collect, thinking, feeling, doing. So if you map this out, you could start to say, like, I know my audience, and during the attract, they're probably needing help with a problem. So I'm going to create content around the problem. When they convert, when they finally reach out to me for help, they may wonder if they're getting the best price, or what competitors I have, or something along those lines. But whatever it is for your business, you want to try to anticipate what they might be thinking before the close. When it comes time to deliver, to actually onboard the client, they may be wondering, what's the next step in the process? And again, I'm generalizing, guys, but after you collect, you get paid and you send the invoice and the transaction's over. How do you get them to be a fan of yours? So how can you use that opportunity to say those guys are great and maybe leave a positive review? And I'm sorry, this slide is intensely vibrant, but really most people break out their tactics along these things. So along these 4 categories. So and it helps to think about it. So in the attract phase, how can your website help answer problems? How can content help with problems? How can social media, events, ads, and referrals, again, to belabor the point, when you convert, how can you anticipate their pricing questions, or their questions they might have about contracts or something, around emails, and how can you use email and video and any of these tools to try to comfort them and ease them along and get them to the next phase, so which is delivery. So how can you use these tools? How can you use your brand in these different tactics to help the process? So how do you get them to onboard? How can you provide support? And then ultimately collect invoices. How can you get them to leave great reviews for you, become a source of referrals, or re-engage you eventually? Okay, so ultimately, your customer shouldn't really think about any of this stuff except that last thing of like, well, those guys were great. You know, they went through this whole cycle, and since everything's been thought about and kind of planned and anticipated, they have a great experience, and that's really your brand is your reputation and your experience. So to build it, you want to think of those channels and how you could best serve your audience. Uh, you guys ever know anyone that gets a new car and they're like, "Oh, I got a great deal"? You know, I don't think I've ever heard anyone leave a car dealership saying they didn't get a great deal. But I think car dealers really think about the process and the structure. And maybe they're evil, and I don't know. But or maybe they're not. I don't. But everyone I ever know that buys a car comes back and tells me what a great deal they got. And so somehow, I don't think everyone gets a great deal. I think somehow they have the mindset of, "Oh, wow, I really got a great deal." And I think that's probably a strategy they use. So brand is reputation. You are the guide, you're not the hero. And then you use your foundational brand plus marketing to grow. And I hope this haunts you. But in the words of John Lax, what have I done today to build our reputation? And I think that's really valuable things to leave with. You guys, that's all I have. I don't know if there's questions or the applause is deafening over Zoom. It's crazy.
I will give the round of applause from all the attendees because I know they appreciate it. We had some questions coming as well too.
Sure.
Mike, if you're good for some questions, but no,
Yeah.
I think that was great.
Completely.
I think it's good. One of the things that I needed probably should have prefaced is that it's really good to see what conceptually businesses are doing and then relate those to our audience. Obviously, we have a lot of different types of customers. We have florists, caterers, venues, event professionals, you name it, in the wedding and event space. So I love that you made it more general so people can kind of translate it. That being said, we had some questions actually come in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through those, and we have about 10-15 minutes left on this. So I'll go ahead and jump into these. If you have questions, or maybe you were paying so much attention that you couldn't break away for a question, go ahead and put that in the Q&A section down below, or you can even chat them in. We have some that came in. Go ahead and put your Q down there, and then we'll read them as well from Mike. We have some advice on some of the stuff. Mike has some advice, but since he's the expert, especially within this field, we'll let him take those, and we'll also put some links and comments to on some resources that we have. But one of the questions, Mike, that came in, what are some ideas? I know you talked about writing a little bit, and I think a lot of the times, a lot of creatives really do a great job, whether they're creating a menu option or an arrangement or something like that. That's kind of the wheelhouse they do their creativity. Maybe they haven't done anything with like writing in the past. What are some good ideas for writing? Maybe if they apply to like the wedding and event space, and do you have any resources to help kind of guide that use for actually writing?
Yeah, I mean, the best tip I could give you is most people hate to write and they think that they're a phony or fraud, or I don't know much about it, so how could I ever write about it? And I'm just lucky to be here, which how I think everybody feels when they start to write. I would say if you could list 10 things that you know about a topic, about your topic, that even your competitors might know, but just 10 things that you know that you could write about, like what makes a great experience, or what makes a great catering event, or what makes a great event, and just start there, because your audience knows way less about that stuff than you would imagine. So things that you find that are just that you think are common really aren't to your audience. They've never thought about it before, maybe. But I would say, yeah, if you could just make a list of 10 things that you know that maybe even other people know, but your audience may not know. That's where I personally got started, and that's the advice that we give to clients.
And with those pieces that they give, do you recommend like putting them on a blog? Do you recommend maybe putting little articles out there on social? Like what mediums do you recommend typically?
Yeah, well, it depends who your audience is. So at Atomicdust, we will write 3 blog posts a week. We publish them to our blog, and then we'll get on LinkedIn and say, hey, we wrote a new blog post. And then we'll get on Facebook and say, hey, we wrote a new blog post. And we'll get on Instagram and say, hey, we wrote a new blog post. And we'll use all of our channels to point to that one hub. So we do that. And then when things aren't appropriate for our hub, you know, I might write something personal on LinkedIn, which has a great article format, or there's a great website called medium.com that is a great place to publish content because they distribute it amongst all their members. So they'll promote your own stuff for you. But yeah, I think try to figure out where your audience is, even if it's long format on Facebook, or maybe you just don't ever want to write anything. And the answer for you is either even scarier thing, which is video. I mean, Instagram stories is a great way to share content nowadays, especially with the audience it has. I hope that answers the question.
No, that did. That's great. I was rereading the question to make sure that's kind of the direction they were going for, and that's perfect. Specifically, kind of changing a little bit, one of the questions was around the landing page.
Yeah.
Can you clarify a little bit what you mean when you say a landing page? And then in addition to that, someone also asked, do you have any resources to guide in writing a landing page? I know with our clients, a lot of them, a landing page may be like an inquiry for maybe an event or something like that. And so something within a landing page for our audience would probably be that inquiry where someone comes in and says, hey, can you do this wedding or the event for me? Can you talk a little bit about that and what
Yeah.
landing page you're kind of referencing?
Yeah. I'm going to use, well, I'm afraid to give like a wrong example. So I'll use myself first, and then I'll try to use it in a more service-based. But anyway, so we have a website called Atomicdust.com. You can go to it, and there's like our work and our people and all that stuff that you'd expect. It talks about our services, great, you know, wonderful. But we also have, so we do branding, but also we'll have special pages created for like healthcare companies. So here's how to do healthcare branding, and here's our experience with healthcare, and here's examples of work in healthcare. And if you want to talk about healthcare brands, here's a form for you to fill out. So we'll do that, and then we'll also have one around professional services. So the same thing. So these things, they can either be part of your main navigation, if you like, or you can just have them live still on your website, but not linked to anywhere. Is just a way to attract people through SEO. Because when people search, they ask Google questions. So people may say, what's the best florist, or what's the best florist for weddings, or what's the best florist for birthdays, or what's the best florist for occasions. And I'm sorry, I'm just making it up. But you want to have a page either on your navigation or somewhere else, just hidden on your site, but still published, that Google can get that person to. So once they're there, then you want to have a form at the bottom or some kind of call to action to either sign up for a newsletter or contact you or buy or download something, just to try to capture their information.
That's perfect.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And I meant to mention as well, all of this is being recorded. We're going to be sending out to everybody too after the session, if that's okay with Mike.
No, it's great. I'm just joking.
I was like, I didn't get permission on that. But we're going to share this presentation with you all, so you can kind of see. I know probably a lot of you are now looking at your hand that's cramped from writing all the notes during the session, but Mike's going to be, we're going to just send this out recorded. Another question came in around logo placement and kind of some things around the logo. I'm just going to do a plug right here and just say we have a free resource that we're going to put in the chat for you all, where you can actually see the logo placement guide that Curate did. You can see that, and you can actually use that to kind of move forward as well. So we'll put that in the chat as well. In addition to that, another question that we had that came in, what's a good link for a blog post? Let's say someone's maybe doing intro and they're like, hey, never done this before for a blog post. What can I start doing for this? What's a good link for some of the first blog posts and then kind of where you want to get to?
Do you mean what's a good link structure, like the URL structure, or what's a good resource?
I'm assuming it's the content of it. Like, does it need to be like a 200-word blog or 1,000 word?
Yeah. So really, I say there's just a couple elements to think about. One, you should have a title that you think would answer the question someone searches for. Just a big title header. And then you should aim for at least 500 words. My first thing I ever wrote, I wrote this thing. It was like 2,500 words, and I thought it was really brilliant. But you could, if that's too painful, and it was painful for me. But I mean, if you could at least hit 500 words or close to it, I think that's a fantastic start. But yeah, I think. I mean, SEO and SEO loves the more content, the better, but 500 is a good size without being, too short. You want to use title tags and URLs and headers to use those keywords that people would search for within it. And then have a call to action at the bottom.
The original question was, pretty good, but I love that you get the fullness of it with SEO, making sure your title's there, making sure you have a call to action. I think a call to action is really important. Sometimes just in the industry, we put it out there and say, hey, this is just great information. But at the end of that, it's almost like someone's longing to make that next step.
Oh, yeah.
So what's that call to action? It doesn't have to be to set up a consultation to set up the bride, but it's like, hey, how
follow us on Instagram, or sign up for our email newsletter, or something really, it could be something really simple, because sometimes people are just browsing, or just, they're not ready to commit or buy. But we use our email list so we could stay in front of them, so maybe they'll be ready to buy 6 months from now. So, but yeah, I think call to actions can be anything from sign up now, or anything as simple as like this page, but you want them to do something. You want to at least try, and you have them there. And it just makes sense to try to get some kind of action out of it.
That's great. And I think someone actually asked a question about something you mentioned. You said the resource that you mentioned about writing, was that medium.com, or what was the resource you mentioned about writing?
There's medium.com is a great way to publish things if you don't have a blog ready to go. And also if you're on LinkedIn, which is a lot more B2B, but if you're on LinkedIn, they have an article format where you could publish your own articles right on their site. But medium.com is a great platform for that too, because they take your content and they'll share it to other people in your category. And so in people go there to do searches and look up things to learn. So it's always a good channel. But really, I mean, for your business, I would try different things and see what works best, because it's different for everybody. It's hard to say, like, here's the one thing you should do, because you want it to, you need to find your audience and where they're hanging out. And a lot of wedding stuff, I really imagine like Instagram and Pinterest and places like that would be great foots in the door and great intros to your brand and your service.
That's great. And tying on to that a little bit, like if there's someone out there that wants to get into blogging and writing, reach out to a couple different organizations that are maybe looking. I know Team Flower just put like a call to, I guess, to acquire different blog pieces, but they're looking for writers and content, things like that. So there are some organizations out there that are looking for content too, whether it's Curate or Team Flower or something like that. So reach out to the organizations as well, and maybe we can publish your stuff as well. Maybe it falls in line with kind of the content they're putting out there as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Partnerships and cross promotion and industry publications and things are always looking for content. So if you could be a source of that, you could have it could be really beneficial.
Yeah, great for your SEO too, for your website. So getting more and more customers that are looking for people. So that's perfect. Couple other questions, kind of going to kind of the beginning parts of the brand conversation.
Yeah.
One of the questions was, where should I start first in trying to improve my brand? Everyone's on a different page, obviously, and we kind of walked about that. But if someone's starting to kind of improve their brand, how can they identify where they're at and where they should be going?
I think really, if you're trying to improve your brand, there's either two things. One, you just need new leads and you're trying to get more sales and grow. In which case, I would say, figure out this sentence. If for audience, we provide these two benefits, and start there, really, because that will unpack a lot. You might be stuck where you're talking about yourself and how great you are and those things. And sometimes that just doesn't have any traction because everybody's kind of saying that. But if you can figure out how to address your audience and how you can help them, that's a great place. If visually you just hate your brand or you're stuck or I mean, there's a million designers in the world. There's millions of different visual styles to go through. If you're trying to do it yourself, it all depends on your skills. I mean, some people really love to make things and some people just don't want anything to do with it. Just have somebody do it for you. So, anyway, I would always start with language. And then once I had the language, I would worry about the visuals.
Yeah, you had a slide too that I really liked with the foundation. It looked like it was foundation versus growth, where it had like the beginning foundation pieces and the growth pieces as well that you can build on top of. I think that's a good one. It looks like you're actually about to pull that up. Perfect. So if you are in a spot where you're looking at your foundation saying, hey, do I have all these pieces figured out from a foundation standpoint? If you do, great, let's start growing. But it's hard to grow sometimes without those foundation pieces. A lot of companies do it, but it's also very important to make sure you're always going back to your foundation and saying, okay, who is my audience and how am I really positioning? So to that question about, where you should start, depending on where you're at, really is probably the best answer. And I think that's a great answer and great resource there. As far as you kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's a good question. Obviously, people are in this COVID situation with, trying to improve their business or get more business. Do you have any like quick tips or just a top one or two advice pieces that a customer could see for like how they can get more business from branding? Like what can I do with branding to get more business today or next week or setting you up for next month?
Yeah. Well, one, who knows? I don't think the COVID thing's going to last forever. So I think the slower times is a great time to think about some of this stuff. Because some of this stuff, you could do yourself. It's not like you need all these resources. You just really have to figure out sort of the audience and benefits. And then really, again, no one will like this answer, but you could write of how you've seen all these articles of how people are addressing COVID or how what you could do in these times, and it's really like you can use the content to calm your audience and kind of spread joy and not germs around, because people really want people want to be aligned with a brand that makes them as a better version. So if you could tell people that here's how we see the situation, and here's how here's how you can pull out of it okay, or here's tips to get through it, or here's I think any kind of advice that's helpful to people would be a win.
That's great. Okay. Someone asked, and everyone's at different stages of their business, but if I'm a new company, how would I find out what kind of customer I should target?
Well, it's a really
obviously
that's the toughest. That's the there's a consultant called Blair Enns, and he says that he says that is his difficult business decision. And in everything he ever writes, he talks about the difficult business decision, and that is, how do you position the audience? Because let's say, I'm just making it up, but let's say you're a generalist person and you only want to go after healthcare people, right? So you're like, oh my God, that's a huge market, but it's so boring and I don't want to do it. And if I go through there, then I have to say no to all these other opportunities. And really, that's the thing that makes everything easier to get. So, or it makes clients and customers easier to get. For example, like right now, if you're a generalist designer like myself, the entire phone book could be your client base. Like, you can call anybody and say, hey, do you need design? And most people probably won't. But once you narrow down and focus on one section of that, now you know who your audience is, and now you know what they read, and now you know what trade shows they go to, and now you know what they're into, and you can align your brand more with that. So positioning and picking a vertical makes things way easier. It's just really scary, and it can be daunting. You can also be a really successful generalist. You just have to work at it a little harder. I think it's easier to be well positioned in a vertical than it is to be a generalist, just because generalists have to scream louder and juggle more audience types. But in the service, especially around weddings and events, I'm trying to imagine what the different verticals would be, but I'm sure you guys could tell me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, someone actually commented as well, the Firefly method for planners has great tools to help you create your ideal client avatar so you can hone in on who you want to market to. A couple of people saying, yes, love that method too. So a couple different ways out there, but I think that's really big. I think that is foundational to understand who you want to go after. And I think it was the flower guy, Braun. We had him on as one of our panelists recently, and he was talking about, kind of going with your gut and kind of establishing who you want to go after and kind of seeing how that floats and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. This is my passion. I'm just going to go for that. If you have a passion within the space, more than likely there is a person for you. Now, whether or not you get a ton of business from pursuing that passion is a whole different conversation, but understanding your skill sets may be the perfect way to align yourself to your ideal customer, because your ideal customer may be a direct result of your skills and abilities too. So That's great. All right, so I think a couple more questions coming in. We have time for about one or two more. Let me see. We answered that one a little bit already. How do I build reputation with brides who are only looking for my services when they might not know what they're looking for? Let me see if I can word that a little bit better. Does that make sense, Mike, or you want me to rephrase that a little bit?
No, it makes sense. I would say if they may not know what they're looking for, you could tell them. I mean, that's the thing. I'm just trying to think of like a general example, but you could either give them, your perspective on what they're about to do. So here are, those list of 5 things. That'll be my example, but you could give, 5 tips for brides after COVID, or 5 tips for the perfect day, or here's, best places to get married, or best locations around, or best whatever. And then when you're on social media, it's not just like, hire me for this service. It's like, here's helpful advice. And then people that may not see the world like that currently will maybe click and then eureka and discover something. And then all of a sudden you know something that they didn't know. And so now it better positions you for the relationship. But really, again, I would pick 10 things that that they don't, that maybe they should know. And I would use that as fuel for content.
That's being the guide too. So I love that prospect of that. Okay. Last question. I've been in business for, let me rephrase. This is coming in from somebody. I've been in business for a while. Where do I start with shoring up my brand? Like, what are some signs that I have it right and wrong, and where do I start with that?
Yeah. Well, if you've been in business a while and you're doing okay, and you probably have, you could try to increase your revenue based on your current customers. So if you already have a pipeline, you already had sales, you already have things, you could try to think of how you could grow. So what additional services can you do, or how can you grow revenue? And then how can your brand support that experience? If you're not just trying to, you can also try to get more customers, but that might be, that's low hanging fruit. Of course you want more customers, but you could try to get more out of what you have. So that comes with sort of the invention of looking at that sales cycle, saying, what are opportunities that I know my customers, or what are pain points I know my customers have, and how can I introduce things? For example, for me, like, we do branding and websites all day long, and then occasionally people will want us to do like social media for them or something, which isn't really something that we do for a lot of clients, but it could be an opportunity. So it's kind of like, maybe I could build a service around that and build a process around that. So,
yeah, I really like that aspect, especially for this audience. Sometimes, I've actually talked to people that have said specifically, like, you know what, I don't really want more than 30 clients a year. I don't want more than 50 events a year. And I think it's capitalizing on what you already have, and kind of, instead of getting more, let's just say a $5,000 wedding. Instead of getting more $5,000 weddings, find a way to get those weddings to become $6,000 weddings in the future,
Exactly.
kind of moving up within that. I think that solidifies what you're talking about, because some people are very happy with the number of events, but if they can do a little bit more revenue with just a little bit more effort, it could pay off big for them.
Yeah. And a lot of that, I mean, when it comes to pricing, a lot of that is just your own belief of what you can get. I mean, that's a whole other, that's a whole other webinar.
Whole another webinar. We'll save for another
but
time.
really, I would say try to increase revenue from your current opportunities, and start thinking about how you can add value and how that would translate into money.
No,
it sounds so greedy, doesn't it? I mean,
you know, given where we're at with the economy and things like that, I don't think it sounds greedy. I think it sounds smart and efficient. So, Mike, thanks for joining, and thank you everyone for your questions and things like that. We are going to be sending this out. Just as a heads up, we are having webinars next week. We're going to be sending that information out as well. So check that out. Tuesday, we're going to be on one with All Seated. Thursday, we're going to have one with Sweet Root Village. And then obviously Friday, we're going to be continuing these. Friday is going to be great. We're going to be talking a little bit about branding, but really into the marketing, and even a little bit dabbling into the sales too, from Flourish & Co. And one of our customers in the industry that understands kind of the background of branding, but also the marketing and the sales aspect specific to this industry. So we'll send that information out. Mike, really appreciate it. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Great presentation. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, thanks very much. Have a great day.
Awesome. We'll see you later. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.